What is the most fucked up thing that happened in Reddit? Relationship advice post by a husband started by saying that his wife is the smartest cookie in the jar. The couple was struggling financially, living month to month, but they get by. Had kids too. Wife suddenly gets the genius idea that they could make a bunch of cash if their car crashed and got written off. Happened to one of her friends who won an insurance claim after driving into a ditch and was encouraging others to do so. Husband says no every time wife talks about it, explains reasons why and finally makes her promise not to talk about it at all. Next week, the guy gets a call from the police saying the wife had run into an accident and is in police custody. Turns out the wife had been waiting at a traffic stop, then suddenly accelerated forward during a red light and drove head-first into a vehicle coming from the other side at top speed. She wasn't injured, but the other vehicle had a mother and a kid who instantly died and another teenage kid in critical condition. Guy visits wife in custody and she acts all proud with no remorse, as if she did something great for her family. Dude made the post asking whether he should come clean about her talking to him earlier about the accident and insurance fraud, which will likely change her manslaughter charge to murder and add decades to her sentence. The post stayed up for less than an hour. Was there ever any follow-up to this? Let's be real here. No way in hell that man's lawyer would allow a follow-up. People are dumb enough to post things anyway. Doxing the wrong person, then go we did it, Reddit. The Boston Marathon bomber one was pretty bad. I was wondering how close to the top this was gonna be. I mean, the guy is dead now and his family was terrorized while they were looking for their missing loved one, so it deserves to be at the top. And be brought up every single time Reddit detectives start trying to do law enforcement's job for them. The FBI released the killer's identity early because of the online speculation. Redditors made the investigation so much messier than it needed to be. Very dark day for this site. Not only did the FBI release the identity of the actual bomber so that Reddit would stop harassing that poor grieving family, but doing so tipped the bomber off that the FBI knew it was him and he tried to make a run out of Boston. In doing so, he ran across an MIT police officer and killed him. That security guard would probably be alive if it weren't for Reddit. Maybe not messed up in a bad sense, but I certainly found it interesting. The guy who kept finding post-it notes around his apartment, thinking his landlord was sneaking in there and leaving them for him. Commenters urged him to get a carbon monoxide tester, and it turned out his apartment was full of it. He had carbon mono poisoning and was leaving the post-it notes himself. Reddit saved that guy's life. Wasn't there also one in a similar sense that the dude peed on a pregnancy test as a joke and it was positive, so Reddit encouraged him to seek medical advice because it could be a sign of cancer and he had it? I could be remembering it totally wrong, but I'm sure it was on here. There was another dude who said that in response to unrealistic expectations, porn caused that buttholes are pink. Another Redditor asked what color his butthole was, to which he responded gray. The Redditor worked in healthcare and advised him to check it out immediately, as gray buttholes are a potential sign of cancer. I'd say the one where the woman lost her child because her own mother used coconut hair product on her child who had a coconut allergy knowing the kid was allergic. Are you freaking kidding me? My mother simply gave her some Benadryl and kept the coconut oil in her hair and put her to fucking sleep. The Benadryl made her sleepy and unable to wake up or be conscious enough to wake up her brother or cry. She vomited in her sleep and the rash spread all over. Her little body was swollen to twice the size. She had asphyxiated in her sleep. She died painfully and slowly in the early hours of the morning. That was, by far, one of the most painful and sad things I've ever read on here. Holy duck, I feel so sorry for everyone in that family. Everybody but the grandmother. The child already went to the hospital for the coconut allergy in the past. The grandmother was from a culture where coconuts are used a ton. So, she gave the oil to the child out of stubbornness. Knowing how dangerous it was. She killed her granddaughter trying to prove a point about a cultural tradition. She should be in jail. She murdered a child because she was too stubborn and petty to listen. Original was deleted, but I found a copy. We went to the doctor several times and they knew that she was having an allergic reaction to something, but every test came back negative and we couldn't figure out what it was. It took 3 more months to figure it out. During that time, her allergic reactions got more and more severe. At one point, she was the only baby in the history of the hospital who had to be kept in a clean room because she seemed to have a reaction the minute she left. When that happened, we began an elimination therapy that would rival the lifestyle of Buddhist monks. My husband and moved our son and it in with his parents because we needed to eliminate everything from our routine to figure out what was causing the reaction in our odd. We stopped using our soap, our shampoo, our deodorants, our laundry detergents, and that was before we even got to our diet. It took us 3 more months, but we figured it out. Our odd was allergic to coconut. The doctors told us that it was a particularly rare allergen, and so it wasn't on any of the skin test panels they ran. When we found out what she was allergic, we were relieved, so relieved. But in addition to feeling relieved, I delved into a bout of hysterical laughter. I laughed so hard I cried, and to this day, my DH tells me that he didn't know if I was crying from relief or pure happiness. You see, I come from a culture that uses coconut almost religiously. It's in our cooking, we break a coconut open at religious events, it's used in almost all sweets, it's in everything. The reason I was laughing was because of how much I hated one particular use for coconut. When I was a kid, pretty much up until I was in the 8th class, my mother would put coconut oil in my hair all the time. It looked greasy as hell, I hated it, and once I was old enough to start doing my own hair, I never put that stuff in my hair again. I was laughing so hard because of course I had a daughter with a severe allergy to the one thing I hated my entire life. We had a lot of fun telling people about her allergy, and everyone laughed because they all knew about my hatred for coconut oil. We told my mother and she laughed as well. She made jokes about how my baby must have heard me talking about my hatred for coconut oil while she was still cooking inside me and decided that she needed to hate it too. We all had a good laugh and left it at that. Or so I thought. As far as raising my kids, my mother was a Justice 99.9% of the time. She was hands-off and respected all of my decisions, even if she didn't like them sometimes. I chose not to raise my kids religiously. But I still took them to community events so they could understand their roots, and my mother never pushed them to pray. The only thing she continually got on my case about was the coconut oil thing. You see, my girls has very textured and curly hair. We don't really know where they got it from considering my husband, and I have pin straight hair that won't even hold a paperclip in it without slipping. I loved it. It was a little on the rough side, and my mother always insisted that a little bit of oil would make the curls soft and more defined. I always said no. Sure, we could have used a different type of oil, but my girls were still so young, and the allergy process had made me terrified of incorporating new things into their routine. I made sure I explained why to my mom too. She remembered what we'd gone through with Ott and her allergy. She brought me food and clothes at the hospitals more than a few times. She helped me move all of my furniture and clothes out of my house when I was eliminating every possible source of allergen. She taught me how to cook from scratch when I was eliminating certain foods from the kids' diet. She knew everything about Odd's struggle. To this day I cannot understand how she did what happened next. November 2, 2005. I was giving a midterm that day to my students, and I had to be at my research lab late that night. My DH was away at some conference and our nanny was down with the flu, so she couldn't watch the kids that day. So I had my mom come take them for the day. My son was almost 3 years old, and the girls were a year and a half old. Overnight visits with my parents weren't exactly common, but they weren't unusual either. They had always come back from these visits very happy and well taken care of, so I had no second thoughts about leaving them with my parents. They spoke to me on the phone after their lunch and then, around 5 p.m., we vacated. The kids were all so happy and healthy. I got home around 10:30 p.m. that night and called my mom to see if the kids were up by any chance and I could say good night. I missed the kids by about 20 minutes, they'd already gone to bed. So I talked to my mom for a little bit, but she's a pretty early sleeper too, so we hung up and went to bed. I woke up around 5 a.m. the next morning to go pick up my husband from the airport at 6. We were going to get breakfast together and then go pick up the kids. I picked up DH, and neither one of us was very hungry yet, so we thought it'd be a nice treat to pick up the kids first and go to breakfast brunch with my parents. We got to my parents' house at 7:45 a.m. My parents weren't there. My son was at the neighbor's house and ran outside with the neighbor as soon as he saw his daddy and I pull up. He was hysterical and crying and I couldn't calm him down. My blood pressure was rising because now I'm thinking that something horrible had happened to my parents. My neighbor tells me that she isn't sure what's happening, but there was an ambulance at my parents' house at 6 a.m. and my dad had run over and woken them up to see if they could watch my son for a few hours until he got back. Of course they'd said yes. I'm calling my parents non-stop at this point, and I'm getting frantic because I don't know what's happened. My son was still crying, but he was calmer. He still couldn't really explain to me what had happened though. I honestly don't remember the details of what happened next, but somehow we figured out that the ambulance was from X hospital nearby, and we broke several driving laws trying to get there. We got to the hospital, pulled into the emergency entrance that was for ambulances only, left the car and bolted inside. A few nurses took notice of us immediately and were asking us what was wrong. I was calmer than my DH at this point, so I explained that I didn't know, but my twin girls and my parents were here somewhere. I'll never forget the look on that nurse's face. She knew exactly who I was in that moment, and she was about to cry. Another nurse took me and my DH to an empty room and asked us to calm down and listen to the doctor before we went to find my family. My mother had put coconut oil in both my daughter's hair when they were playing the previous day before bed. The girls loved it when my mom did their hair, and so they had asked for braids, and my mom was doing their hair. She put coconut oil in both their hair because it would make for smoother braids. According to my son, I'd started to get a little dizzy and itchy when my mom was doing her hair, so my mom gave her some kids' Benadryl which made her sleepy. Since it was close to bedtime anyways, the kids then went to bed. Giving her Benadryl was something we did whenever she had a mild reaction, since it usually meant she accidentally came across some coconut from a secondary source. We also showered her from head to toe immediately to erase any lingering traces of it. My mother simply gave her some Benadryl and kept the coconut oil in her hair and put her to fucking sleep. The Benadryl made her sleepy and unable to wake up or be conscious enough to wake up her brother or cry. She vomited in her sleep and the rash spread all over. Her little body was swollen to twice the size. She had asphyxiated in her sleep. She died painfully and slowly in the early hours of the morning. My mother had found her when she went to check on the kids in the morning around 7 a.m. She was already dead by then. My mother screamed, called for my dad, and that's when they'd gone to the hospital. My dad hadn't known about the coconut oil until my mom explained, and to this day, I've never seen my father so angry. He was still unable to look at my mother, out of fury, or me, out of shame, when I saw him at the hospital. They had rushed to the hospital hoping there was some way to save my Odd and to get my id checked out immediately, since he thought she might have a mild allergy as well. I can't even explain to you the emotions my DH and I felt. I remember seeing my little girl and just being in denial. There was no way that she was gone. This had to be a horrible, horrible nightmare. The following days, the funeral, and explaining to my other kids what had happened are events I still can't talk about because it just breaks a part of me. My mother was investigated, as was my entire family. I almost lost my kids to my country's version of CPS once because they thought my kids were in danger. My DH and I had to fight tooth and nail to show that uprooting them during this time would be the worst thing for them at the moment. My mother was never arrested. My father did leave her, though they're not officially divorced. The majority of my mother's family refused to speak to her, and the few that do speak to her only do so on a limited basis. She currently lives on her own in a small town, and every couple months I'll get a call from her telling me how sorry she is and how she just wasn't thinking, and can I please find a way to forgive her? She wants to come see me. The only thing I can find to ever say to her is, you can come see me when you bring my daughter with you. A couple years back there was an Reddit thread asking about people who accidentally killed someone, what happened? Someone posted on it stating that as children, they used to play at this place in the outskirts of town with a huge river and cliffs. There was this special needs kid that him and a group of other kids pushed off a tall hill on a super rainy day. They freaked out, ditched him and went home, swearing to keep the whole thing a secret from their parents. Apparently the kid went missing, probably died where he fell, and his body was scavenged by animals, or he fell into the river while injured because he noticed that the kid was missing and it was on the news. Someone replied to the post and posted an unresolved missing child case from decades ago, and it matched the story. He even looked into the poster's Reddit history and noticed that he mentioned moving back to his childhood town, which was the town the missing kid was from. He also posted geographical data of where a river and cliffs would be located within walking distance of a school. The posts were all deleted apparently. One that sticks with me was a woman who got violently raped and posted a photo of her beat-up face for support. People dug through her post history and found that she'd at one point posted a pic of her at Halloween with her face in makeup that included makeup bruising. The crowd then decided that she was faking the whole thing for attention and started to harass her non-stop until she posted again with a video of her crying and trying to scrub the real wounds off her face. I wonder what's wrong with these people. I get fed up with everyone insisting everything is made up. If you think it is, move on, don't have a go at someone who could be in genuine distress or danger. That's my reaction to the "this is fake" accusations on subs devoted to advice, help, etc. My general thought: who cares if it's fake if the resulting advice is still good? There are countless other people out there reading the reactions and advice, tons of lurkers seeking help but who aren't posting, so if people offer good advice to a story that ends up being fake, that advice can still be helpful to people. If someone is begging for attention or aiming towards a GoFundMe scam or something, absolutely yes, 100% call them out. Once money gets involved, be skeptical of all such stories. But until then, whatever.